Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all my professional colleague coaches out there in the world, or those that want to become a professional coach. This series is for you. Today, we're going to be talking about the ICF, International Coaching Federation's PCC marker, number 4, competency number 4. My name is Peter J. Redding. I'm a professional coach. I've been a professional coach, master certifying coach, master mentor coach, master trainer of coaching for the last 25 years. And thank you for joining us. We have several people here that are live that I'm going to invite you to put things into the chat box, whether you're on Facebook or you're on Zoom. And I'll take some breaks every now and then to answer some of those questions. If you could type those in the chat box, then really appreciate that. If you're listening to this not live and you have questions, please do put those into the Facebook or YouTube chat box or questioning, and we will have periodically answers to those as well. So I encourage you to fully engage with this and welcome aboard. Let's get right to it. So Exploring Coaching Mastery, series number 3, episode number 4, and series 3 is all about the ICF PCC markers, right? Today we're going to be talking about competency number 4, cultivates trust and safety. There are 4 particular PCC markers that are attached to this particular competency set. Cultivates trust and safety. So let me again, the background of this, if you've missed the first 3, is we demonstrate ethical practices. I'm not going to talk about that one today, but if you'd like to go back and listen to that. What is an ethical coach all about? And are you an ethical coach? Do you have a set of ethical guidelines that you go by, that you publish, that you share with your prospective client or sponsors as to what we do and what we don't do? We embody, number 2, a coaching mindset as opposed to a mindset of a subject matter expert or authority or someone else that is telling people what to do or teaching them or counseling them. A huge part of what separates a professional coach from someone that just thinks that they are coaching, but really not. Establishes and maintains agreements, pre-agreement, in the session agreement, and so on and so forth. And it brings us to today's cultivating trust and safety. So the PCC marker 4.1 speaks to the coach acknowledges and respects the client's unique talents, insights, and work in the coaching process. So there's several facets to this, several aspects to this. I also, you notice, have it yellow highlighted double. What this means is that if you demonstrate this during a coaching session that an assessor is listening to, you get double credit. You get credit for 4.1. That's one of the 4 things that the assessor is going to be looking for is, are you as a professional coach cultivating trust and safety in that particular coaching session? And it is also one of the 11 markers, indicator markers, that you are actually embodying a coaching mindset. And again, a reminder of the coaching mindset that is applicable here is embodying a coaching mindset, a mindset that is open, curious, flexible, and client-centered. I'm going to underline client-centered. Client-centered is by acknowledging, I'm going back up to 4.1 now, coach acknowledges and respects the client's unique talents, insights, and work in the coaching process. We're all about being client-centered. This is not about being coach-centered or educator-centered or subject matter expert centered. This is all about how can I support the client to achieve what the client wants to move forward on, explore, make commitments against, come up with self-generated solutions, and so on and so forth. So I actually am cultivating a sense of trust and safety because my client can talk about whatever they want to talk about. It's their agenda. It's their time. So what does this sound like? And what does this not sound like? What it does not sound like is you taking over the coaching process. So let's start with that one first. Let's say, for example, this is my follow-up session from the session that I had with my client maybe 2 weeks ago. And I review my notes, which I encourage you to do. But you take over the agenda by saying, okay, so last time you wanted to talk about 3 aspects of your career. You got to 1 and 2. So why don't we start off the session today with 3? I've just taken over the agenda. I've just taken over the coaching process and haven't even asked the client if that's what they want to talk about today. That's what it does not sound like. It doesn't sound like, yeah, well, okay, I hear that insight. I hear that potential option, but I'm not sure that that's really appropriate for this scenario, given what I know about you. So what other ideas do you have? Not creating trust and safety, am I? I am taking over and telling them that they are picking the wrong thing, perhaps, or in my mind, it seems like the wrong thing, or not the most efficient way of getting there. So that's what it does not sound like. That's, you know, that's obvious. I think that's pretty obvious. So what does it sound like? It sounds like, wow. I really want to recognize the energy, the insightfulness, the energy of digging down deep into this topic, whatever the topic is. And so good work. And it could be just as simple as that. Respecting the client's unique talents and insights is, again, taking them in and not discouraging that. So there's kind of a passive and an active respecting and acknowledging here. The passive way is allow them to talk, mostly. Let them explore, mostly. Let them share what is going on for them inside of themselves, mostly. So you think, well, that's passively acknowledging and respecting their process, their way of doing it. Actively is just saying it out loud. I really respect you tackling this issue. I know this has been one of the issues that you've talked about having a hard time with in the past. Period. Right? I'm not going to try to compare it to the past. I'm not going to dig into the past, but I want to acknowledge them for their fortitude, for their desire to move forward on it. Their desire to even explore it, in some cases, is a huge first step that breaks the inertia of not doing something. I've been so afraid of this. I've been afraid to bring it up at work. I've been afraid to have this conversation with my boss. I've been afraid to even think about, rocking the boat. And when I can hear that and acknowledge that, it is very supportive for me just to say that, again, without authority, without a sense of I know better, I'm an elder, I've been in this position before. Leave all of your stories out of it, frankly, and just be there. Just be there. And the last piece in terms of coaching process, the coaching process is the inquisitiveness, the curiosity, the holding the space from my side as a professional coach, and allowing the client to do the work. Allow the client to explore as deep as they choose to explore. Again, without my influence. Now, there's sometimes when I might say, okay, so you've been talking about this now for 10, 15 minutes. Would you like to continue digging into this particular aspect? Or you can go on to whatever you feel would support you next, and allow them to make the choice, allow them to continue the process that's best supports them, as opposed to what I think will best support them. So that's also part of honoring their coaching process. When they don't want to go into something deeper or go on to the next topic, that is also supporting their process. Okay, so if you're good for that one for now, what's next? Like taking a tennis ball and knocking it back into their side of the court. Okay. If that's as far as you like to go with this one, good work, well done. What's next? So this does not have to be very elaborate. This does not have to be a long diatribe of repeating everything back that you just heard in the last 5 minutes of them talking and saying, well, I heard you do step one, then you came to revelation number one, and then that sub category of revelation number one was A, B, and C, and you did this. Not necessary. That is not being succinct, which we'll get to in a later PCC marker. Okay, let me just check questions. Not seeing any questions yet. Okay, very good. Let's move on to what is the benefit for the client by acknowledging, respecting clients' unique talents, insights, and work in the coaching process. Take a minute. I'm just going to give it 30 seconds of silence here, and I want you to think about for yourself, if I were to do this, or better yet, when I do this as a professional coach, what or how does that benefit my client? Let that sink in. I sometimes get a response back from the early coaches that go through our training and say, yeah, but I'm not doing anything. Like, right? It's like the client's doing all the work. And so the benefit here is creating the space for the client to actually do the work that they're ready to do. It's honoring them as human beings. It's honoring them in terms of their journey of self-mastery. An example I use, maybe career mastery. Roshana's weighing in here. It honors who they are and empowers them to realize that they have all they need in their life. Yeah, the very foundation of coaching is that the client has access to their own best answers for life. And it honors that. It truly honors that. That is precious. That is one of the gifts, and I think the responsibilities and privileges that I have as a professional coach, to create that place of cultivating trust and safety for my client to accept their brilliance, get in touch with their innate brilliance. What's going to work for them in this scenario, in this case? Yeah. I may not have seen, this comes from Anne, that I may not have seen my unique talents as talents that can really help. Yeah. It's kind of like the nose on our faces. We overlook it all day long, and sometimes for an entire lifetime. And natural gifts and talents, unique talents, clients' unique talents, word for word out of the marker here. Clients' unique talents, acknowledges and respects those. I'm reminding my client of who they really are at the deepest level of their being, the deepest level of their creation. I believe that's a divine connection personally. You don't have to believe that to be a professional coach. But they are equipped. They were born with natural, unique gifts and talents. And so am I overlooking them as their coach? Am I overlooking them in this field of safety and trust that I want to create for my client to get back in touch with? So thank you for those. Okay, Pat. Yeah, these are the new PCC markers that were published in October 2020. So I'm sorry that I didn't say that. And the competencies are also ones that we went through in series number 1. Yeah. All right, let's move on to, so the benefit to the client. It's clear and obvious that this is really, really important to acknowledge, respect the client. And you don't have to beat them over the head with this either, by the way. It does not have to be everything that the client says. You have to come back to, okay, I got to do 4.1. I got to do 4.1. Weave it in, have it be organic, have it be real. Don't make it up. So that's the other piece that I'm going to add to this from my perspective and my experience, is to have this be an authentic acknowledgement, authentic respect. Yeah. Okay. 4.2. Coach shows support, empathy, or concern for the client. Coach shows support, empathy, or concern for the client. For me, this is a privilege. I have so much respect for my client. I have so much empathy for the humanity, life happens, the issues, the things that they are currently involved in or up against or trying to negotiate. And this is this happens all the time. It doesn't matter whether it's a year of COVID. It doesn't matter whether they're in their 20s, starting a family or starting a career. This is a lifetime thing. There's always things to deal with. And I do not want to overdo this. So let's talk about what would this sound like and what would this not sound like. Here's what it would not sound like that comes popping into my head. You poor thing. I hear that you've been victimized all your life. I hear that you've had, you feel like you didn't get the proper education. You didn't have the proper parenting. I do not get into that. That may be the place for a counselor, but not, I don't join them in their maladies of life. There's a thing in the old competencies that used to read, to be able to be with strong emotions without getting enmeshed. Okay, so I can still have empathy. I can still show concern for my client without joining them in that. So the analogy that I use here a lot is holding the sacred space. Showing support, I'm here with you, keep going. Okay, that's what it might sound like coming from me. I hear what you've had to put up with, showing some empathy, but I do not say, yeah, I understand. I was in the same place when I was your age at 37 years old and going through midlife crisis. I can show empathy in my tonality, my energy, and sometimes when I don't say something, sometimes when I might say something. And I can do that in a honoring manner and not get embroiled in it, not get enmeshed in it. Another way that I might show support is, hey, you're doing great, keep going. And have them continue to talk, have them continue to explore, have them continue to go deeper if that's where they're at in the coaching session right now. Empathy, again, I don't want to do a Clinton, I feel your pain, but again, make this your own. Make this your own. Make it authentic for you. I hear that. And it could be as simple as that. So how do you want to be with this? Is another great way, as opposed to what do you want to do with this? This is a great place for bringing in the beingness of coaching. You know, coaching the who of the client, the humanity of the client, showing support and empathy that way. So, how do you want to be with this? As opposed to what do you want to do with this? This is another great way of what this might sound like. Now, I am going to take this one to an extreme in terms of showing concern for the client. If the client, and this is rare, because a coaching client typically is screened ahead of time to make sure that coaching is an appropriate modality for them. And so all the coaches that I have trained and my colleagues have trained worldwide is this a responsible human being that has the capacity to be responsible for themselves and their actions and their commitments to move forward? Do they have that sense of self-responsibility and are not, and again, this is grossly over summarized when I say, are they in a victim or a victim mentality? So with the proposition of they are responsible for their own life, but if they, in rare cases, say, you know, I'm going to do harm to myself or to somebody else or to property, then I have an ethical and a legal obligation here in the US to report that to an authority that can check on them, okay? That has not happened ever with me and my clients over the last 25 years, but I have some of my students that has happened to. And so the concern for my client is also to protect them from themselves if and when appropriate. And so that goes back to a very ethical tenet that we talked about in series number 2. So I encourage you to go back and listen to those if you haven't already. But in most cases, this is collegial, this is fluent, this is organic, this is authentic from coach to client without overdoing it. I'm here for you. Keep going. I hear that it's tough. So how do you want to deal with that? How have you dealt with that in the past? Those are all the ways that it might sound like for this one, 4.2. Yeah. All right, let's move on. What is the benefit for the client? They know that their coach is on their side. They're rooting for them, right? They're on their side of the field, yelling and screaming and jumping up and down, cheerleading, supporting them. You got this. Keep going. Well done. What I found is that there's a huge lack of that in the world. Sometimes in family units, you haven't done enough. You got 1 B, and how come you got a B instead of concentrating on the 6 A's that they got in their report card? In corporations, what have you done for me lately? Yeah, and that I just completely overlooked of all the great things that has been contributed. That's expected. Thank you very much. That's what we pay you for. And so how come you screwed up on this one? So we have an opportunity here to change the field, and with a little acknowledging, a little showing of support, a little empathy, a little show of concern for the client goes, wow, thank you. Because they've been focusing on mostly what they've not done, what's missing, what's late, what they messed up. Maybe they forgot something. And by hearing, noticing, and saying something to the client, it's like, oh, wow. I mean, some of my clients said, Peter, I really needed that. Thank you. You bet. What's next? Okay, so again, you don't have to make a whole party out of it, but just a little sprinkles of support goes a very, very long way. 4.3, coach acknowledges and supports the client's expression of feelings, perceptions, concerns, beliefs, or suggestions. And again, you see our yellow highlight here. So this is a double value, if you will, out of the 11 in competency number 2. And again, I remind you, embodies a coaching mindset, a mindset that is open, curious, flexible, and client-centered. So this one comes out mostly in the client-centered sort of that statement, by acknowledging and supporting the client's expressions of their emotions, their feelings. They're human. Are they pensive? Are they fearful? Are they grieving? All of those kinds of things is part of, again, my responsibility at the PCC level coaching, which is a fairly advanced level of coaching, to be able to hear those things, be comfortable with those things, and acknowledge and support the client's capacity to be there. And have it be okay for you. Don't get caught up in those same emotions and join them in it, because like I say to my students, now we have 2 clients and no coach. But if I can hold a space for them to have those feelings, and yes, some of my clients cry. Sometimes they yell and scream, they're angry. Sometimes they're grieving a loss of a very important thing in their life, or a person in their life, or a pet in their life. They have perceptions that may be not in the mainstream of being okay, or not okay to express outside of their, in their own head. Or they have concerns that are bottled up. They have beliefs that they have been ground into them over a course of a lifetime. Corporate is a dog eat dog world. I heard that probably 1,000 times when I was in corporate, maybe more. So some of the beliefs that come about, is there a space for you as a coach to support them to be able to voice them and acknowledge and support their voicing them? That's what it means by client's expression. The client is expressing their feelings, they're expressing their perceptions, they're expressing their concerns about a teenage daughter that is, not being very cooperative, and is what they are considering going down the wrong path, or with the wrong crowd, or into drugs, or into whatever. Okay. Is it okay? Is it safe for that client to talk about those things in your presence, in your space that you're creating for them to be able to say those kinds of things out loud? This is serious business. That's why I call it professional coaching. This is not something that if you have been doing consulting or teaching or training and say, yep, now I'm a coach. This is serious business in terms of how to appropriately support a client that's going through some or all of these kinds of things, and allowing them a place to speak without you butting in and saying, here's how you're supposed to handle this one. It's not okay for dad to blah, blah, blah. Let them figure it out. They are resourceful, amazing human beings. And the key here is to support and acknowledge and encourage. I would even go so far as to encourage each one of these things. When somebody starts crying, and then they realize that they're crying out loud and in front of me, and I do most of my things on a phone call or video, so I can see them and hear them, obviously. I might just say, you're safe with me. Keep going. You're okay. Let them continue to process. Honor that part of their humanity. Honor that part of your humanity, again, without getting enmeshed. Beliefs or suggestions, yeah, they're going to be expressing those as well. So allow that. I was probably giving you a whole bunch of examples already here, but let's go to what this sounds like and what it doesn't sound like. It sounds like a lot of things I just shared. What it doesn't sound like is, that's not the proper belief here for a person that wants to be a CEO. Now, I've just told them that that's not okay. I'm not acknowledging and supporting their expression. What I might say, if again, is part of their agenda of I need to understand the mindset. I need to understand and be prepared to take on the responsibility, the mantle of responsibility at my next level of leadership. And they say something in terms of beliefs. So, people just show up and they're lazy. Let's say that that's something that came out of the client, and that's one of his or her beliefs. Then I might challenge that and push back and say, okay, I get that is a strong belief that you have, right? Acknowledge it. And I also have a responsibility to their agenda of supporting them to move forward and getting ready for the next level of leadership responsibilities. So I may come back also and say, so does that belief continue to serve you in the role that you're in and the role that you're preparing for? Or that's a yes or no question. I'll catch myself that. Thank you very much, Peter. So how does that belief continue to support you? How does that belief continue to support you? Would be a better approach to that. But I do not challenge them and say, that's frankly, that's the wrong belief. So that's what it would not sound like, is to disagree or for you to get your ideas of what is a better belief, or is you can't show those kind of feelings and emotions at CXO level. Get a grip, man. Not appropriate. If and when I might do something like that, or a coach does something like that, that is a professional coach or not a professional coach that's calling himself a coach, trust and safety go down. Trust and safety is not a static commodity. You don't reach a high level of trust and safety and then ignore it or stop being that space, because it will erode quickly. So then the thing for the client in terms of, the impact of the client, in fact, let's just go to that one. What's the benefit of the client to do these things is to continue to maintain a high level of trust and safety, so that maybe next session or 2 sessions from now or 3 sessions from now, they really get to the deep, deep, deep part of what's going on inside of them. Because you've continued to build on that foundation of trust and safety. If it gets eroded in week number 2 or week number 3, by the time they get to week number 6 or 7 or 8, you've left a mark. It's not safe to talk about this with Peter. It's not safe to get into this part of my life. because he has attitudes, he has beliefs, he has, he's going to think of me less if I get into this. And those, I think, are probably mostly subconscious, but if it's recent, it's raw. It's like, whew, nope, don't talk about family with this guy or this coach. Not okay. I'm just going to get a barrage of what I'm doing wrong and what I have to do that corrects my current behaviors or actions or approaches to this part of my life. The opposite of that, and I've seen it, and this can happen very, very quickly with a client, is by doing the initial chemistry session, foundation session, building this trust and safety right up front. You can talk to me about anything that you want. It's your agenda. I'm not here to judge you. I'm going to create a safe, what again, I call a sacred space. I create a sacred space for you to talk into, explore, however and whatever you want to explore. And that may change from week to week. The client very quickly, and I'm talking within weeks now, not months or years, they will get into the heart and soul of what's going on for them deep down inside of them. That is having an impact on every aspect of their life, their finances, their health, their family, their career, what they think about themselves, what they give themselves permission to do or not do in the world, permission to say or not say what's on their mind that is authentic for them, fall back in love with themselves. All of those things can happen within weeks when trust and safety is there between coach and client. Yeah, it's stunning. Stunning. Again, this one, if you do this one, you'll get double credit. You'll get credit for 4.3, hip hip hooray, and you'll get credit for the one of the 11 in competency number 2, which we've been talking about. So there's actually 3 out of these 4 in trust and safety. That's how important these are to the professional coach and to the professional coaching relationship that I have with my client. Let's go on to number 4. Coach partners with the client by inviting the client to respond in any way to the coach's contributions and accepts the client's response. So there's 3 distinct components here. We'll come to that in a second. But again, this is a twofer. This is a double. You get 2 credits for this by demonstrating this in your coaching session. Assessor's going to be listening to this. And if you've done this appropriately and enough evidence within that coaching session, the assessor go, yep, I'm going to mark that, mark 4.4. Now, that assessor is also going to go back and go, oh, this is one of the competency indicators for competency number 2, one of the 11, and you're going to get credit for that one. So it's a twofer. You get 2 credits. What does it sound like? What does it not sound like? So coach partners with the client by inviting the client to respond in any way to the coach's contributions. So let's talk about what coach's contributions are. New coaches go, oh, good. So I can give the client advice. No, this contribution is, I might make an observation. I might have an intuition. I might have a feeling or reaction to what the client has just said. And I reflect that back in a non-authoritative, non-directive manner to the client. So that's what we're talking about, first of all, about terms of coaches' contributions. The last part, and accepts the client's response, that's going to be the easiest one out of this whole thing to discuss. So let me talk about that. Is the client goes, nah, I don't get that. That doesn't really apply. Yeah, no. And so if the coach comes back, is again what it would not sound like. to get credit for this. The coach says, yeah, no, I'm pretty sure that this is really going on for you, because it seems to be a repeating pattern. And, let me say it again, maybe a little bit differently, or give you a metaphor. And now his coach is just taking over the agenda. Maybe it's noticed. The coach is starting to preach. The coach is starting to mentor. The coach is starting to say, okay, so now as the adult here, I want you to get this point because it's an important one to your life. The assessor is going to go, oh, this person thinks he's coaching, but he's not coaching. He is in the process of teaching, mentoring, parenting, giving a lesson, clearly not coaching. So now, sad face, you don't get credit for 4.4 as 4.4, and you don't get credit for 4.4 up there in competency number 2, because you have not demonstrated this particular marker. So the accepts the client's response if the client, whatever it is that you have just contributed, shared, observed, and the client pushes back on you, and you say, okay, so where would you like to go next? That's accepting the response. And I might even say, this may or may not be true, and that's totally okay. So I even back away from my contribution and allow the client to either grab onto it, accept it, go with it, or not go with it, not accept it. I just don't get it. I'll give you a personal example of this one, by the way. My coach, early on, this goes back more than 20 years ago now. My coach said something to the effect of, when you start talking about this aspect of your life, your energy kind of goes lower. So what's going on for you? Okay, perfect, bang on 4.4, right? And as the client, I said, no, I'm just tired. I've been busy. I've been working 20 hours a day getting this prospectus together, blah, blah, blah. It's just, I'm tired. And my coach said, oh, okay. So what would you like to go to next? Or what would you like to talk about next? She accepted my response because, frankly, I wasn't ready. It didn't make sense to me what she said. Now, the tail end of that story is 3 weeks later, she's basically said the same thing because my energy got low when I talked about the same thing. And then my brain kicked in and like, oh my God, I do not want to get into this kind of a job. It clicked. But it was in my time, not the coach's time. And the coach was professional enough to know that and just say, okay. So again, that's an example of the client's response and accepting that client's response. They'll get it when they're ready to get it, even if you are 100% right about it. And oh, by the way, you're not always 100% right about it either, even if you think you are. All right. Inviting the client to respond in any way to the coach's, yeah, so you can say, so what it would sound like is, one of my observations here, client, is at the end of each thing that you share that might be a possibility, you add the words, but I'm really not sure. So what's going on for you when you say I'm really not sure? Oh no, that's just my way of speaking. That's yeah, just a matter of the way I phrase things. Now, if I make a big deal out of it and bring it back, and I said, no, I think there's probably something deeper here. That's not it's not accepting my client's response. I do, and I don't get credit for this one. If I point that out as an observation, what I call a clean observation without any Velcro fingers around it, attachment to it, and I say, okay, so where to next? Again, returning it back to the client in terms of where they want to go with whatever they want to go with. Okay, then I do get credit for this one by asking that, making that observation, and being clear that I'm not attached to it, and they can respond in any way that they choose. Then I would get credit for 4.4, and I get credit for 4.4 as one of the 11 up in competency number 2. Yeah. Finally, what's the benefit? What's the benefit for the client to be able to make the choice to accept or not accept my observations, my contributions, my intuition, my visceral reaction to something that they've just shared? This communicates louder than almost anything else that I'm going to do as a coach. They're in charge of their life, their journey, their path, their discussion, their agenda, what they want to do, what they don't want to do, what they're ready to understand, what they're not ready to understand, what they're ready to move forward on in this piece of their life or not. This is not my opportunity as a coach to give them advice, as I shared earlier. Okay. So that's it for Cultivates Trust and Safety. I continue to create trust and safety in every single coaching session that I have with my client, whether it's over the course of 3 months or 6 months, a year, or multiple years. This is a live, fragile membrane that exists between coach, professional coach, and client. Be gentle with this one. Be careful of this one. It's what makes the difference of the client being able to go deep and being vulnerable or not. If your client is only there on a superficial level, one of the things in terms of self-reflection that I'm going to share with you on this particular aspect is look at your behavior as a coach, as a professional coach. Am I creating a safe space for them to share fully? Am I creating a safe space for them to be vulnerable with me? Are they safe with me crying? Are they safe with me being in deep emotional feelings? And if you find yourself saying, I think I probably shared this back in the competency set, but I'll share it again here. If you find yourself, how are we going to get out of here? I have just joined them in that deep emotional thing that I'm not comfortable with as a human being. Maybe I have things that are unresolved there. I'm not talking therapeutic issues here. It's just, you know, when people around me are angry, then I get, I'm not comfortable here because maybe that's happened in my past. Deal with it as a professional. If you need support in that, get support in that. How can I become comfortable when my client gets melancholy, whatever you fill in the blank? Because if I check out or I start getting into my stuff, then again, I'm coach's AOA is not available. Missing in action. Missing in action. MIA. Missing in action. How can I stay present, fully present with my client, regardless of what they're talking about? Yeah. All right. We have about 9 minutes remaining. I'm going to open it up to questions and see what questions that might have come up in any or all of this. So you can type those into the chat box for me. Okay, here's a couple things coming through now. Very powerful when you shared, if a client is not going deep, we look at ourselves as well. Yeah, thank you for that, Anne. Yeah. I know that there's a lot of what I'm going to call superficial or transactional coaching that takes place in the world. And I'm going to attribute most of that to the coaches that are not comfortable with going deep. And it's also the clients. Yeah, no, I'm a human doing, and I like being a human doing, and I get rewarded handsomely for being a human doing. I used to be one of those myself, so I speak autobiographically here. Not a judgment on anybody else. And I thrived in that environment until I was exhausted, and I felt at 37, here's kind of an insight into me. At 37, I was exhausted. I had basically worked as many hours as someone that's 70 years old by the time I was 37 years old. And I was physically, mentally, emotionally, and I didn't have any idea about spirituality then, but spiritually kind of bankrupt and exhausted. Yeah. And so if I had had a coach at 37, I would have talked only about doing. These are my next tasks. These are my targets for the year. This is my team members and each of their improvement plans. And I'm very comfortable with any and all of that. In terms of going deep in my own feelings or my own thoughts or my own inner chemistry, my own spirituality, my emotionality. Thank you very much. I'm not comfortable with that at all. Now, fast forward that 30 years, 40 years. Part of what I look back on and I see what's going on in the world right now is there's a lot of superficiality. There's a lot of transactional coaching taking place in terms of how do I get back into my productivity of life. And fair enough. Okay, that's also part of coaching. I'm not saying that that's not part of coaching, but don't have it be 100% of what you do as a coach. And again, if you do only doing coaching and you only talk about the situation of what's going on with the client, you cannot be passed at a PCC level. Because I have an obligation at this level of coaching to deal with both. It doesn't have to be 50-50, but there has to be a component that says, okay, so here's what's going on with your situation. Got it. Okay, great plan, great actions. Now, how about you as a human being behind all of this? You're a human being in the role of parent. You're a human being in the role of an executive, author, doctor, nurse, healthcare provider, educator. What's going on for you deeper down? I have an obligation as a professional coach to deal with both. So again, trust and safety is frankly the only avenue I know of that can get you there. And part of that is taking care of yourself and dealing with what's going on for you around strong emotions, around conflict, around injustice. How can I hold that space for someone to get into what they're needing to do for their agenda? If I am limiting that by my discomfort of any and all of the above. So yeah. Another question here from Archana. When a client is crying, what could be some ways to get them grounded again without rushing it? Yeah, I'm not interested in grounding them. If they're crying, I let them cry. It's like I give them permission to cry, even though they don't need my permission. It's like, you're safe with me. If you need to cry, cry. And you can cry as long as you'd like. So again, not what do you want to do with this? How are you going to get out of this? How are you going to get back to your most resourceful self here? Inappropriate. Let them process. You're safe with me. You're okay. Let it go. Now, at some point in time, I'm going to say, so do you want to not do our coaching session today? Do you just need time to be by yourself and process this strong emotion that's going through you right now? And that's okay. They do not have to get out of that state of melancholy, grief, strong feelings of loss in the next 22 minutes that they have with me in their coaching session. So I do not have an agenda for them to get grounded in the session with me. So again, I turn it back to them. They're responsible. They're a responsible human being. And the other thing that I'll do with them in that stage is also say, I understand, and for me, this is part of the human experience. You know, because they're judging themselves that it's not okay to be here. It's not okay. I'm a captain of freaking industry. I am a author of a book that talks about not, being grounded. It's like, yeah, they too. The high and mighty are human beings, by the way. They don't necessarily allow themselves to be human beings, and they don't want to be seen as vulnerable. But in my space, they can be, and they are incredibly safe with me. Again, going back to the theme of the day, creating safety and trust. Yeah. So, yeah, you're safe with me. You're okay. Just let me know if you're ready to move on, or if you need to be, do something for yourself. And I will hold space for them. I'll hold space for them for the next 25 minutes if that's how much time we've got in the session. Yeah. Great question, Archana. Thank you. Aparna. Aparna's got, when a client is crying, what do you, oh, no, that's from Aparna. Got it. Yeah. Thank you, Aparna. Let me see if there's one that I missed here. Suppose this is from Archana. Suppose for any reason that trust has not happened, even in the first few sessions, is there any way a coach can regain it? Well, it may not have even been there in the first place. It may not have been established if there's any reason that trust is not happening. I can only control my side of things. So I can invite trust, I can invite intimacy, I can invite and share, you're safe with me. What I cannot do as a coach is to force them to be safe with me. I have no control over that. I can create the environment, and that's my goal as a professional coach, create the environment of safety and trust. But at the end of the day, it's the client's capacity to do that. I'll give you an example, and this hasn't happened as far as I know, but it could have, might have, and it might in the future, is that I'm an incredibly compassionate human being. I'm a compassionate man. I know this about myself. I've been told that many times, and I feel, and it'll bring me to tears in a lot of cases when I get into that modality, right? Now, I know that about me. My lifelong clients and students know that about me because they've spent time with me. But for a new person that comes into my coaching practice, they may not trust men. They may not trust elders. They may not trust a Caucasian. They may not trust an ex Marine Corps officer, an executive, high-level executive, and on and on and on. Whatever they place on me, and based on their past experiences, they may have a very, very strong tendency of saying, I can't trust a guy like him. So if that's the case, then I probably will need to not be their coach. They'll probably, in the chemistry session even, and that's why it's so important to do the chemistry session of, do we have good chemistry? do I have the capacity to trust this person? And that comes from the client side. If I get a sense that they are not trusting, then I may choose to not be their coach, or suggest that they might find a more appropriate coach that they have better chemistry with. And chemistry in this case has to do a lot with that initial stage of building trust and intimacy with the client. So it's a great question. If it's not happening, it may be me, and it may not be me as the coach. So that's the question. And if they do not have the capacity to want to trust, need to trust, have trust in whoever their coach is, and that's why I think worldwide it's become pretty standard operating procedure to give a client, a prospective client, a choice of who they work with. So we're going to present 3 highly qualified coaches, 3 professional coaches that are accredited, are credentialed by the International Coaching Federation at the PCC level. That's a mandate that a lot of organizations have worldwide right now. And you get to choose who you want to work with. You can choose him, you can choose her, you can choose them, they, whoever you feel is going to best support you. So that's the approach of that. And if I'm not feeling that level of trust, even after all doing the chemistry and all of that into the second or third, then I would probably suggest that we terminate the coaching relationship. You know, if they're just not able or willing to go into that level of intimacy or safety with me. Yeah, that's what I would do. All right. I think that brings us to time. Thank you all for your attention, your focus. Thank you for wanting to be a better and more professional coach. Next week, we're going to be talking about competency number 5, maintains presence. Maintains presence. There's 5 specific markers that we'll be talking about again. And so have a great week of life. Have a great week of coaching. God bless. Namaste.